think with B2B marketers, you never, ever have enough time. So repurposing is like the quickest way of giving yourself content every single day that you can reshare without actually having to do any more work.
Welcome to B2B Content Strategist, where we bring you insights and practical tips straight from the minds of top B2B content marketing experts. I'm Amy Woods, founder and CEO of Content 10x, and in each episode, I chat with leading B2B marketers about how they consistently craft and execute successful campaigns, even when faced with tight deadlines and limited resources. If you're looking to elevate and optimize your content marketing efforts, you're in the right place. Keep listening. Hello and welcome to the first episode of Season 3 of B2B Content Strategist. It's great to be back. I had such a great time sharing with you Season 1 and Season 2 of B2B Content Strategist. We had some great feedback and fantastic guests, so I'm really looking forward to sharing Season 3 with you. We've got some wonderful guests on Season 3 as well, and some fantastic conversations with big hitters in the B2B marketing space. So to kick off this season, I'm speaking to Katie Morley, who is an award-winning content marketer with over 8 years of experience in content strategy, creation, and leadership. She's been the in-house global content director and global head of content at 2 leading B2B SaaS brands, alongside agency experience at a global digital marketing agency. In this episode, Katie provides the trick to outsourcing content well. She explains why her dream content team would start with a content marketing director, and she talks about the importance of face-to-face meetings with subject matter experts when creating B2B content, and so much more. You're going to love this conversation, so let's dive in. Katie, welcome to B2B Content Strategist podcast.
Happy to be here.
Great to have you on. Looking forward to this conversation. So to kick things off, Katie, could you tell me a bit more just about your varied career? Start where you want to start. I'd love to know more about how you got to where you are today.
So I have actually worked in content since 2015, which is coming up to 9 years now, which makes me feel very, very old. Most recently, I was the global content director at a B2B marketing and customer experience brand. Before that, I was global head of content at Content Square, which is another B2B brand in the customer experience space. Before that, I spent 4 years at a digital marketing agency working on global clients, from everything from kind of Clarins and UGG to Conservatory Land and smaller, more kind of local brands. So very varied experience. I've experienced content teams in all kinds of setups and agency setups and in-house teams, from small ones to big ones, growing teams from scratch to inheriting teams and expanding them and being an individual contributor. So a very varied experience in the content marketing landscape and a very varied journey to get to where I am now.
And on your LinkedIn, it says that you are an award-winning content marketer. So congratulations. I saw, mentions of various awards. It also says that you're trying as many variations of Argentinian Malbec as possible, which I was really interested in. Why Malbec? What's the love for Malbec?
I am weak. I just love a red wine. And I think when you find something you like, there's no point trying other things. You've just got to keep going down the route you go down. And my dad did a wine tasting course a couple of years ago. And the one thing he learned on that, which he told me, was if you don't like a specific type of wine the first time you try it, no matter how much money you spend on it, you will never like that wine. You don't like the taste of it. You don't like the tasting notes. So I decided at an early age that I liked Argentinian Malbec and have just been traveling around the world trying to find my favorite one.
Well, I remember being in Argentina, and what fascinated me was the wines where we were just in one part were defined by the altitude. So there was all the Argentinian Malbec, and the main thing that they put on the menu next to the wines in the wine list was its altitude, which I always remember being really unusual. So the cost was determined by the altitude of the vineyard, which I found really interesting. That's what I always remember about Malbec, and that's what I always remember about Argentinian wine. So
I feel like I need to travel further. I've not quite had that kind of menu yet. I feel like I've been robbed.
I've never seen it since either. So yeah, you'll have to go to Argentina and see that. So very varied career, really interesting, great to speak to you. I'd love to know. So you've managed different content, different marketing teams, different roles within content. What would you say is like the ideal team structure? So reflecting on your career, what kind of team do you like to have around you? What kind of roles are most important?
I think the key, if I could build the perfect team from scratch with no budget and just free reign to build exactly what I would want to build, I would build a team that had a content marketing director who set the strategy and who worked with the C-suite, customer teams, sales team, marketing teams to really understand what the market audience needs and what the business is trying to do, so the goals, and then be able to distill that down into content teams. I think in that content team, having something like a role that's a content strategist who takes those business goals and ideas of where the content team needs to get to and where the business is looking to grow into, whether that's markets or industries or product features to make market fit. Having that content strategist that can take the insights that they're getting from the content marketing director who knows the strategy and business direction is really important to then distill that content strategy and direction down into actual tangible content assets. So underneath that, then I'd have a couple of copywriters, some maybe in-house, some outsourced, and things like it's different in every team you go to, but one of the huge things for B2B marketing at the moment is obviously social media strategy and your social outreach plan. So I think having social media managers within the marketing team, not sitting within kind of demand gen or other teams in kind of more cross-functional roles that report into the content marketing team would be fantastic as well. So that would be my perfect setup: a director, a strategist, one or two copywriters and some freelancers, and the social media manager.
Completely makes sense. And you already touched on it when you mentioned about with the writers potentially in-house, maybe some outsource support as well. So what other areas do you tend to prefer to outsource versus keep in-house? Like which skill sets or functions of the team is more preferable to work with, like an agency or freelancers?
So I think in terms of outsourcing, it really depends on what the business needs. I think in content marketing teams, when the business moves so quickly, there will always be aspects of content marketing that have to be done in-house. And I think those are the things that are real product market fit. So things like landing pages on the website, I think they're really important to be built in-house. The majority of other things, anything from kind of press releases to ebooks to case studies, when it's less so specifically tied to the product market fit in the audience, I think it's a lot easier to outsource that kind of content. I think especially when you work in B2B marketing though, quite often you'll find that it's very repetitive, and you work in an industry, or your B2B brand will often have kind of multiple industries that it works into. So multiple industries that are experiencing the same problem that your B2B product can help with, whether it's retail or financial services or automotive. And then equally within those different industries, you have the different teams which also use the product in a similar way, whether they're in the retail team or the e-commerce team or the product team. So what I've found being in B2B marketing for the last 4 years is that you spend a lot of your time repeating the same content over and over again. It gets very repetitive. You need a retail ebook, then you need a beauty ebook, then you need a travel ebook, depending on kind of how your sales enablement teams are set up. Typically, I found that people within sales teams have a specific industry. So if they see kind of a retail ebook built for the retail industry, but their industry is automotive, they want an automotive ebook too. So you're quite often repeating the same content over and over again with kind of slight tweaks and twisting things. But I think the trick to outsourcing that kind of content is to always deliver a perfect version of whatever asset, whether it's an ebook or a landing page or a case study, to always deliver a perfect 10 out of 10 gold standard example yourself first in-house, so you can go through the problems, you can speak to the product team, you can speak to sales, you can go through from start to finish that asset, get rid of any concerns, deliver this perfect asset, and then engage outsourcing agencies, freelancers, agencies, whatever, to take that asset and then repurpose it for different industries or different teams. But I think the biggest hack I've learned in content marketing is just always share that perfect example first, put in the effort to build something perfect, because it will save so much time in reviewing and editing work after that if you've just done it perfectly first. So I think you can outsource anything if your briefs are strong enough, but that would be my biggest tip for anyone in B2B marketing. Just always do it yourself first before you outsource.
Is that largely because you found that if you haven't done that and you have instructed, let's say, an agency to try and do the first version, is it just a bit too challenging for them to really get into the detail of the business, like you said, meeting with the product teams and the sales teams? Is it always just too much of a barrier when you're not inside the company to really like get that gold standard the first time? It's just too challenging for them to truly understand.
I think that depends on how good you are at briefing, but I would say unless you've gone through the process yourself, you'll never know how much of that brief you really truly need to be able to do the finished asset. So I think you can get very, very, very good at briefing once you've been in a business long enough, but you will always have a more generic understanding of the product, of the teams, of what you're doing, because you're in-house. When you work with a freelance agency or a freelancer, they don't have that knowledge and insight. So things that you think are a given that just kind of make sense to you because you're doing it day in, day out, you can quite often overlook in a brief for a freelancer. So I think it's more just making sure that when you do go and put that brief together for a freelancer, you know that they might need FAQs from the product team, or they might need access to your persona cards as well. And I think what costs more and more money when you're using freelancers, especially if you've got a very tight budget or you're a small content marketing team, all those little things add up because it just requires more content rounds, more revision rounds. If they have to email you again or jump on another call with you, sometimes you end up having to spend more. So I think it's from an ongoing experience of always trying to do more with less and make it as cheap and efficient to outsource as possible, that it's worked for me every single time in the companies that I've worked for, spending the time to just sit there, do it properly, make sure the brief is ready. And it works with product teams as well. If you can build the perfect brief, then the product team know what they need to deliver to you for the next brief when they're regurgitating it for travel or automotive or retail. So yeah.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. Really fun question. So can you tell me about the most memorable marketing campaign that you have worked on? Why it was really memorable, why it was important to you, what you did with the campaign, what you learned from it?
Yes, I actually have two, and I've got one that's like a resounding favourite, but a second one that I really enjoyed for a completely different reason. But I'll go for the main one first. So when I was the global head of content at Content Square, if you don't know who Content Square is, they're a digital experience brand that track and analyze all actions and activities that a user has on a website to help brands improve their website experience, remove frustration, kind of improve the entire digital experience from landing pages, product pages, all of that stuff. So what Content Square had was access to the anonymized data of like hundreds of thousands of these global well-known brands around the world, which meant that they had so much interesting data, interesting metrics about how people were interacting with websites, what makes a good website, what makes a poor website, what's causing frustration, what's causing people to bounce. And they began building this huge yearly benchmark report. And the benchmark report was just insights about website experience, mobile devices, user experience, taken from all of this anonymized data. I can't remember how many data points there were, but it was like millions, if not billions of data points. And I think this one is the most memorable one for me because it was just this campaign that kept on giving. It was like juice that would just deliver a content marketing strategy for the entire year. So the first asset was the benchmark report. We delivered this PDF. It was all the benchmark data broken down into different parts of the experience that were most important at the time based on kind of user behavior. But from that, we would then break it down into, okay, so for the retail industry, here are the benchmarks for the retail industry, or for the UK, this is what's happening on UK websites, or in the Asian market, this is kind of what they're doing. And from that, we'd build individual reports. Then we'd do webinars. Then we'd do press releases. Then we'd do event talk tracks, and we'd do social media campaigns with all this data. And I think it was very, very impressive. Like, it drove so many results. It generated so much interest. People were intrigued by it. People would ask the customer success team at Content Square, when is it coming out? When can we expect the next benchmark report? So not only did it generate loads of demand, it was great for driving pipeline, but I think in terms of branding, it was the most perfect example of, okay, we know your industry and we know your competitors and how they're performing better than anyone else. Here's all of this data. It's that kind of really strong, which is often upsettingly quite rare for B2B to have such a strong brand message with an asset that is genuinely useful, that is able to use the data that only they can get to deliver this content marketing asset that just has so much life and legs. And it was a nightmare to deliver. All of that data, crunching it down as a content marketer was so difficult. I think we got to 24 iterations or something of the first benchmark report before we actually went live with it. But it was a fantastic asset that, again, every year you could reiterate, you could improve it, you could add new benchmarks. So you didn't have to reinvent the wheel every single year thinking, what can we do this year to drive demand? And it had built a lot of brand awareness, and people kind of knew to expect that from Content Square. So that was definitely the most memorable, biggest global kind of content campaigns I've worked on, with just really impressive content at the end of the day.
I love the effort that goes into that big, massive piece. And then the fact that what was so wonderful about it was the gift that kept on giving, and you just were able to create so much more content from it as well. Just a super quick break from this conversation to let you know that if you're a B2B technology or professional services company and you want help with streamlining your content operations, outsourcing your content repurposing is the number one way to produce more high quality content and boost your ROI without putting any more pressure on your team. In fact, it could save your team up to 30 hours per week. We offer content repurposing services for video and audio content. Whether you have a show or you're launching a brand new one, maybe you have an archive of awesome content, be it webinars or a virtual event, or you want help creating thought leadership content that we can repurpose, we've got you covered. Head to content10x.com to see how we can help you and start increasing your efficiency and the value you get from your content. Now back to the conversation. That's a really great example. And you said you had another very memorable campaign as well.
Yeah, this one was just a little labour of love. I inherited the benchmark report. They'd already been doing it for a couple of years before I joined. So I kind of inherited that amazing initiative from the marketing team that had already been there. But the other one that I just really enjoyed, that was kind of the complete opposite of that huge data report, and we did them in the same year, was a campaign we did called Retailers on Retail. So instead of the benchmark report that was really data-led, data-driven, full of insights, numbers, kind of stuff like that, this one was aimed at specifically the retail industry, which was their biggest market. And it had a real emphasis on making all of the Content Square clients the hero of the story. So the intention was to build like a community feel, to speak to experts in the retail space, and for them to share kind of their best advice on how to have a successful year in retail. So myself and the content team kind of split up into different brands, and we went chasing down after different brands. In the end, I think we ended up speaking to 12 brands in total, including Sweaty Betty, Sonos, TomTom. So really big, really interesting, impressive brands. And we just interviewed them and we asked them kind of, what have you learned? What have your biggest challenges been this year? What do you think is coming up this year? What's your best advice for other retailers in the retail space? And then we took all of that information and we again chopped it up, really big on content repurposing and re-content formatting and stuff, which you'll be pleased to know. But we split that up, and so we did video content from webinars that we ran, from conversations that we ran with people. We wrote up interviews in kind of more of a magazine style format, so kind of editorial, less kind of ebook report based. It was much more magazine, community, chatting, big logos to drive demand. And it was just it was a really fun campaign that ended up being an interactive web page where you could go on and watch videos of Sweaty Betty talking about something and then click into an article with TomTom about their latest development on their website. And it was just, again, it was a really fantastic campaign. And that's one of the ones that we won the best B2B branded content campaign of the year for. So it was good to get that recognition as well from kind of the industry. But it was a really fun campaign to work on, actually interviewing. I think quite often in B2B, you do get a little bit bogged down in product guides and data reports and stuff. So actually sitting down and interviewing people in more of a journalistic approach, it was just a breath of fresh air. It was really fun to work on.
And I think what's excellent about, well, that example, both examples, is it's the creating content with, isn't it? Like, we're not just for others, but with others. The involvement that you had of doing the interviews and or in the case of the survey, it's getting all this information from others rather than just, you know, kind of sitting down and doing it in silos, which I think is great. And like you said, the community building side. And both obviously involved epic repurposing, as you mentioned, taking content, and clearly you have a good do more with less repurposing mindset. Is there a particular type of content that you love to repurpose, like a particular format or style of content that you just know that is what I love to work with the most because I'll get the most from it?
Any kind of long form report, just to me, just want to get my teeth stuck into it, because when you've got 30 pages of insights or quotes or testimonials or data or examples or use cases, you can turn that into a different blog every single month. You can turn it into an entire social media campaign on its own. You can create kind of videos for it. I think the best example of that would have been the benchmark report that we did, because there was just so much really interesting data in it that you could create a new article every single week about a new data point or something new that we'd found out, or how customers are moving towards mobile, or how in France people are more inclined to look at product pages rather than scroll category pages. Like, there was so much data in that we could just continue repurposing. But I think you can repurpose anything, like even case studies, you can turn into carousels on LinkedIn. Podcasts as well, written up into articles, or social media campaigns are always a good one. I think one of the key things that I always implement in any content marketing team that I'm in or leading is always the COPE strategy, which is just create once, publish everywhere. So never ever create it once and then put it on the website and think it's done. Like, if you've done a case study, share it internally, do a social media post, do an email, include it in your retail nurture email campaign, include it in the marketing newsletter that month. Like, create it once and then think of every single other avenue that you can repurpose it into. I think with B2B marketers, you never ever have enough time. So repurposing is like the quickest way of giving yourself content every single day that you can reshare without actually having to do any more work.
Yeah. Are there any content creation and management tools that you're currently loving at the moment? So any that improve like workflow or process or creation that just really enjoying to use?
Yes. So I've actually just come from a company that was using Jira for its marketing project management. And I'm sure most people listening to this podcast will know what Jira is, but it is not a marketing management tool. Which was an absolute nightmare. So straight away, kind of, I came in and thought, no, I cannot manage a content team with more than one person. If we're using freelancers and we've got in-house copywriters, like, Jira is not going to work for a content team. It's just not flexible enough. So the tool that I use for project management is Airtable. I kind of use it for three main things. One is, like I said, project management. It is so easy to use. It is so easy to set up new users, to set up different boards, all these different views, timeline views. You can kind of split things down by different user. If you want to look at what one specific content writer is working on, you can have a look at their to-do list. It's the best tool that I have found for project managing a content team that is actually still free for the way that I use it. You can kind of carve it up to exactly how you want it. And then I also use it as a content repository. So I think one of the main things about content is you're creating all of this content, but very few B2B companies, especially in kind of startup B2B companies, don't have the internal tools to really enable that content with the sales team, with the marketing team. So questions that you always get are kind of, where do I find this? how do I find that? Like, I know that you did this ebook on retail a little while ago, but I can't find it. And one thing that Airtable is really good at is being used as a content repository. So every single time we get a new asset, it goes live. I add it into Airtable I upload the document, I add it in with a how to share Google Doc. So they can click into the Google Doc and it will have a ready-made social media post and an image that they can download and share it straight away. And Airtable allows you to share like a visible view for anyone in your company that doesn't even have an Airtable account. So for that, it's been so helpful in terms of a single source of truth for every single content asset we do. If we've done it, it will be on Airtable. If you can't find it, search for it, filter it. It's very user friendly. It's very easy to use. So we use it for I use it for project management and then a global repository of all of our case studies and all of our content marketing assets. Other than that, Grammarly, self-explanatory. Don't know what I'd do without it. Love it. I also use, actually, to be fair, I've been lucky enough to work with amazing design teams in every single role that I've been in that take on the bulk of all of the design work and creative work. But for anything personal branding, Canva, another classic, so easy to use. Yeah, I love Canva. And then more recently, ChatGPT, but I think we're going to get onto that.
I was going to ask, yeah, you guessed the next question, because that's exactly what I was going to say in terms of leveraging AI within content marketing efforts. What AI tools, you mentioned ChatGPT, but are you using or take your interest in, and what would you definitely steer clear from when it comes to, we don't use AI for those kind of activities?
So the two main ones that I would use on kind of a daily basis are Otter AI and ChatGPT. Otter AI for transcription. If ever I'm on a meeting or interviewing someone, it is just so great at writing up that whole interview for you. The updates in it are even better, that it gives you like meeting notes and meeting actions all automatically now. So it's a dream for any of the more kind of interview-based stuff that I'm working on. And then ChatGPT. I will be very, very clear. There's things that I do not use it for. And one of them is any kind of content writing. I don't use it to write long form content, to write anything creative. Like, I think when you work in content marketing, following the proliferation of everyone getting access to ChatGPT, it is so obvious within the space of 10 seconds to see if someone's used ChatGPT. And I will just I'll scroll past it. And I think I wish everyone could take a course in how to use ChatGPT properly, because when you start seeing LinkedIn just full of all of these posts, it just gets very, very boring and you're just scrolling really quickly. So I never use it for anything creative. The things I think it's really good for are translation. At most of the companies I've been in, they've been big kind of global companies where some of the content writers aren't necessarily English as a first language speakers. So I think it's great for when they've written something in English or they just want to get things checked. It saves me a lot of time doing a heavy edit if they can just put it through ChatGPT and get ChatGPT to just take out any bits that maybe don't sound like local English, or just kind of tidy up the syntax a little bit. It's very useful for that. I think also proofreading and editing other people's work before it comes to you. So obviously content teams, when you hire them, they're very good at writing and editing, but in my experience, I've worked with a lot of other departments that maybe aren't copywriters first and foremost, so sales teams or product marketing teams, incredibly insightful, clever, impressive people, but just writing is not their strong suit. Quite often we have to get a lot of product marketing briefs or product marketing copy or emails or stuff like that, landing pages, briefs from the product marketing team, where I'm spending a lot of time reviewing content just because it's not written in a way that we would want to share with our audience. It just needs a little bit of tweaking. So I think ChatGPT is, with the right kind of prompts, that's great as well for product teams to use, for sales teams to use, just to take off the edge of that editing and proofreading before it comes to a content writer or a content manager to tidy it up and just make sure it's in line with the brand guidelines and tone of voice. But I think also for content repurposing, it is quite helpful. I think if you've put the time and the effort in to doing the asset first and you've worked hard on that asset, then actually repurposing it using ChatGPT is quite simple, especially things like case studies which follow a very formulaic process. It's kind of challenge, problem, solution. When they do follow such a template, it's quite easy to turn that template and ask ChatGPT to deliver 3 social posts for that template, for that case study, and be able to deliver additional content relatively quickly without too much effort. That said, it's all about the prompt. I've spent a lot of time and effort really honing those prompts, so I'm not given all the absolute tut that most people are sharing on LinkedIn at the moment. So you've really got to spend your time on that prompt, and then I've worked out ways to get kind of what I need quicker than I think most, and to be able to put in the tone of voice that I'm looking for and follow the same structure and it not sound too cheesy or too corporate, are kind of the main things. It's great for like ideation as well. If you're struggling to come up with an idea for something, I always think it's quite good to, again, put in a very specific prompt and get a ton of ideas that you can then build off and expand on. And it's good for a starting point if you're staring at a blank page and you're stuck.
Yeah, it is. And in terms of places that you've worked and the use of AI, like you said, using ChatGPT, have there been any really specific like rules and guidelines, like an AI policy in terms of kind of copyright and what you can and can't put in, because then obviously that tool then kind of owns that information that you've passed over to it. Is that something that you've had much exposure to, from the legalities of it, or not so much? Yeah, because I'm just keen as to how many companies are doing that kind of thing at the moment.
At the moment, nothing whatsoever. I think the companies that I've been at when ChatGPT was becoming more and more used in day to day, it was more the excitement of look at how much we can do and how quick it can be and how fast we can deliver stuff with this new tool. And I think the next stage in these companies will be, okay, we actually need to be careful about the security and the privacy of this tool. I haven't had any kind of guidelines or policies yet at all.
There's 2 sides to it, isn't there? There's the side of what you feed it, what you feed the tools, and what you're giving away as information. And then the other side is what you receive from it, because it doesn't have any distinguishing attribute to look at whether something's trademarked or copyrighted or anything. It could give you a phrase that a company have got the trademark over or something like that, and you wouldn't know, and things like that, because it wouldn't tell you. So I guess it's like what you use with what it spits out, but also what you're giving it as well. It's an interesting world. It's the Wild West at the moment, isn't it? And I think everyone's just trying to figure it out, really.
Yeah, I think we're all muddling through it together. I know you saw, like, when it first started coming out, there was so much chat around what it can do and how amazing it is. And then slowly it started twisting to be, okay, but how can we use this ethically? How can we use this sustainably? Which is the same way it always goes. You get so excited about it first, and then everyone takes a step back and they're like, okay, right, let's actually do this properly. So I'd say that kind of AI-based policies and training will be a given in B2B businesses within 3 years' time. But at the minute, I think we're still all in that, okay, here's a really fun snowball, let's just keep snowballing until there's a policy.
I think so as well. So on the podcast on B2B Content Strategist, we ask a previous guest a question for the next guest, but they obviously don't know who that guest is. So Chris Hutchins, Director of Content Strategy at Sixth Sense, he's posed a question for you. And his question is,
what tips can you offer for communicating with very important stakeholders outside of your marketing silo about business goals, product roadmap, business strategy? How do you engage with those subject matter experts who are kind of outside of your comfort zone?
Yep, I think this one comes down very much to networking skills and communication skills. I think the worst thing you can do is send someone an email or a Slack saying, I need XYZ from you and I need it tomorrow. You're not going to get any response there. And if someone messaged me like that, I would ignore the email and get on with the million other things that I'm doing. I think if you're ever working with a subject matter expert outside of marketing, the first thing you should do is just put in a meeting with them face to face, introduce yourself, say hello. You might not know them yet. If you don't work with them day to day, they might not know who you are. and explain why you're doing what you're doing. I think if people can understand the vision and what you're aiming to achieve and how they can be pivotal in helping the business achieve that, they're far more likely to engage with you and give you their advice and their learnings. I have to do this quite a lot, obviously, when you start at B2B companies and you're learning the brand and the product, and you have to spend quite a lot of time on calls with people that you don't know, who don't know who you are, to try and get information from them, to be able to write an article about something that you have no idea about yet because you're still onboarding. And I think there's nothing more important than just being personable. It's a joint effort. We're both at the same company. We've both got the same goals. I really need your help to be able to deliver this. You're the subject expert. There's nothing wrong with stroking a little bit of ego. Most people like a bit of ego if they know they're an expert in something. But just being personable, explaining the whole thing, doing it personally, just asking for their advice, always sharing the finished output with them for their approval before it goes anywhere else. Just giving them real accountability for helping in the project, and thanks when it's done, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic answer. So now it's your opportunity. So if you imagine that you're surrounded by some industry peers like yourself, like leaders in the B2B marketing world, and you've got a chance to learn something from that room, what would be your question?
If you are new into a director role or a leadership role in a content marketing function tasked with building out a content marketing plan, and no one's done it before, and you're the first leader to come in and be tasked with content strategy, what is your best advice and where do you start?
I like it. Very good question.
Let's go for that.
That's a fantastic question. I look forward to raising that to the next guest. I'm not going to give away who that is yet, but I'll be sharing that in the episode, and obviously with yourself, Katie. So thank you. Well, I mean, we could talk for ages, but we've run out of time, haven't we? So thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It's been a really fantastic conversation. I'm sure everyone listening in has just gained so much valuable insight from everything that you've had to say. So thanks for being so kind with the time and the information that you've shared as well. It's been great. Where would you like people to go connect with you, like, you know, that they listened to this episode, yet like, you know, that they enjoyed it?
LinkedIn would be perfect. Yeah, that would be great. And thank you also. It's been a really interesting chat, and it's nice to join a list of incredible content marketers that you've already had on your podcast. And it's just nice to see my name on there as well now. So yes, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Oh no, thank you for coming on. So yeah, we're B2B marketers. It was obviously going to be LinkedIn, wasn't it? So I will provide the link to go connect with Katie and say hi to Katie over on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been an awesome conversation.
Likewise. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of B2B Content Strategist. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Feel free to connect with me on social media. You can find me, Amy Woods, founder of Content 10X, on LinkedIn. If you get in touch, please do leave a message and let me know that you listen to B2B Content Strategist. You can also connect with Content 10X. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And for more insights on optimizing your content marketing and the power of repurposing, head over to content10x.com. You'll discover valuable resources to help you maximize the impact of your content. We have our sister podcast, the Content 10X podcast, hundreds and hundreds of blog posts, and a library full of free resources and guides, all about how to be a better content creator and content repurposer. If you're seeking consulting support or a trusted partner to handle your content creation, repurposing and distribution, then also reach out to us. We offer a world-class, fully managed service that takes care of as much or as little as you need when you need it. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'll catch you in the next one.